Every day was a reflection of the previous one, as if my life was trapped in an endless cycle. I slowly incorporated myself, feeling the cold air of the morning rub my naked skin. Valencia in winter was not as cold as Madrid or Burgos, but that old apartment seemed to absorb the cold and keep it in every corner. I slipped out of bed, being careful not to make noise. It doesn't matter. Alonso had already left. Wrapping myself in a Marfi-colored silk kimono, I walked to the kitchen. The automatic coffee maker was already running, releasing the bitter aroma that became my only daily pleasure. I leaned on the countertop, waiting for the coffee to be ready, while looking at the reflection of my silhouette in the window that gave to the street. The city began to wake up, cars, voices, a distant murmur that made me feel more alone than I already was. The shower water in the main bathroom told me that Alonso had not yet left. Seconds later, he appeared in the kitchen with his impeccable dark suit, tie in one hand and mobile phone in the other. His black hair, always neat and combed, still had traces of moisture. He didn't even look at me when he took the cup of coffee, gave a quick sip and left it on the table. "See you tonight," he said. The sound of the door closing behind Alonso echoed more intensely than it typically did. I took a seat. Gazing at my half-empty cup of coffee. I did not experience anger. I did not experience sadness. Just void. Salomon settled next to me, his breath steady and profound. I glided my fingers through his coat. He slowly turned his head and gazed at me with the unchanged fervor as ever. At that moment, I made my decision. The following day, as Alonso departed, rather than remaining at home, I seized Salomon's belt and unlocked the door. The brisk morning air brushed against my bare skin beneath the jacket. The avenues of Valencia stretched out before me, vibrant and alive, unconcerned with my presence. Yet, for the first time in ages, I found myself yearning to truly live. We strode away with determination. I moved at a quicker pace than normal, nearly without being aware of it. I chose not to glance behind me. Sometimes the only path to self-discovery is to shut the door and walk away. The morning chill brushed against my skin as I stepped through the door alongside Salomon. Beside me, the air carried the crisp scent of winter in Valencia, a subtle blend of dampness intertwined with the distant salty fragrance of the sea. We strolled aimlessly, lost in thought. Excessive. Merely sensing the rhythm of our footsteps disrupting the dullness of recent years. The cobblestones of the ancient streets echoed beneath my black leather boots. I donned a long beige wool coat. Moving without haste, words were unnecessary for us. He comprehended. Or at least, that was the illusion he sought to embrace. We departed from the neighborhood and ventured into the narrow streets of the old town. We walked past coffee shops that remained closed, small shops that were just starting to increase their prices. At some moment, almost unknowingly, we found ourselves in the garden of El Toria, that vast green expanse that weaves through the city, where existence appeared to flourish more organically than within the stark confines of my home. I settled onto a stone bench, allowing the gentle morning sun to embrace my face. Salomon reclined beside me, ever watchful. I closed my eyes, savoring for the first time in a long while something as simple as just being present. Free from haste, free from habit. The sound of heels clicking closer drew my focus. As I opened my eyes, a woman stood before me. Tall, with a slender and elegant silhouette. She wore a Bertio's coat that beautifully contrasted with her loose brown hair, styled with a casual yet meticulously considered flair. Her crimson lips formed a smile as our gazes intertwined. "Apologies, I couldn't resist admiring your dog." "It's beautiful," he remarked, his voice carrying a melodic lilt, unmistakably Valencian. "Thank you," I responded with a subtle grin. She glared at Salomon, unafraid and unwavering. He softly glided his fingers across his thick coat, closing his eyes with a contented sigh. It felt peculiar. Salomon was not one to readily embrace the presence of unfamiliar faces. "Do you possess something unique, perhaps?" the woman remarked, gazing up at me with an inquisitive look. "Indeed," I whispered. Uncertain of how to respond, she observed me for a moment, as if she could decipher something on my face that I had yet to recognize. I'm Alba, by the way. She finally introduced herself. Elena, I said. She gave me one final glance before she turned away. As she moved around, her heels echoed against the floor. Salomon followed her with his gaze, just as I did. Something within me stirred. That afternoon, upon my return home, Alonso had still not made his appearance. I indulged in a leisurely shower, allowing the warm water to soothe each muscle in my body. Alba's image surfaced in my thoughts unexpectedly, her smile, the way her eyes seemed to pierce right through me. She possessed an undeniable quality that captured my attention. As I emerged from the shower, I paused before the mirror. I examined myself closely, something I hadn't done in quite a while. My damp locks cascaded over my shoulders. My lips, devoid of makeup, appeared more subdued than usual. I stared at my reflection, my clavicles defined, the shape of my hips outlined beneath the towel. I pressed my lips together. How long had it been since I last felt desired? I took a deep breath and dressed myself with intention, thoughtfully selecting each piece of clothing. He was just as flawless as before, adorned in a black-rimmed coat, and a gray scarf that draped around his neck with effortless grace, upon catching sight of me. He offered a smile that suggested he had been anticipating my arrival. Elena, he uttered my name with a familiarity that sent a chill down my spine. What a remarkable sense of timing. We departed at dawn, I responded, gently stroking Salomon's coat to keep my mind occupied. I'm pleased you accomplished it. His gaze moved over me with a deliberate slowness. The gentle scent of his perfume enveloped me, a blend of woodiness intertwined with a sweet, feminine essence, yet underlined by a subtle strength. My body responded before my mind could catch up. A chill ran through my skin beneath the fabric of the dress, and when she noticed my reaction, her lips curled into a smile of silent satisfaction. It was an experience she was all too familiar with. I was fully aware of my actions. I planned to purchase a coffee. Would you like one? She inquired abruptly, shattering the enchantment. I exhaled softly. Alba strolled away with grace. And I seized the moment to take a deep breath, attempting to restore my poise. Salomon, lying beside me, observed me with his boundless patience. Just be quiet, I whispered to him, gently stroking behind his ear, yet he required no words. He was already aware. Upon Alba's return with the coffees, he presented me with one in a steaming cardboard cup. Where is your canine companion? He inquired abruptly. I blinked and surveyed my surroundings. Salomon had vanished. I rose at once, with an odd sensation in my abdomen. It was inappropriate to vanish in such a manner. Alonso remained silent. He lingered in my gaze for a moment longer, then delivered one final kick before extinguishing the cigarette. Against the stone, be careful, he said at the end. His voice carrying an unsettling edge that I found disconcerting. Then he departed. I remained there, observing his figure fade into the trees, the reverberation of his words lingering in my mind. Exercise caution. Salomon came closer and rested his snout in my hand. I glanced back once more, where Alba observed us from afar. He offered a smile. That grin, it was unique. For the first time in ages, I sensed that I was on the brink of diving into something that maybe was unable to emerge. That night, the tension lingered in the atmosphere of my apartment. Alonso's presence in the park stirred a sense of unease within me. It was not just his unexpected appearance, but also the intensity of his gaze, his caution. There was a shift in his demeanor. Yet I couldn't pinpoint what it was. I strolled barefoot into the kitchen, the silk robe parted, revealing the gentle curve of my thighs. I poured a glass of red wine. The chill of the glass sending a shiver through my fingers, the soft glow of the lamp bathed the room in a warm, golden hue. Salomon observed me from the entrance, embodying his timeless patience. Do you believe Alonso has some insight? I inquired softly, more for my own sake than for his. The dog nodded with a gesture that seemed almost human, as if genuinely attempting to engage in conversation. I let out a sigh and took a sip of wine. The table trembled as my phone buzzed. Alba. Are you having trouble sleeping? I smiled unconsciously before responding. Not much, how about you? The 3 points emerged immediately. I refused to succumb to sleep. I long to see you. My heart shifted. I pressed my lips together, sensing a gentle warmth seeping through my skin. I couldn't overlook what was unfolding. I didn't want to overlook it. I'm uncertain whether this is a wise choice. This time, his response came swiftly. Since when do you appreciate good ideas? I bit my lip, Maria Salomon. He continued to gaze at me, as though he possessed an understanding of his impending actions. A short while later, he found himself on the street. We gathered on a quiet terrace in the Carmen neighborhood. Alba stood there, a glass of vermouth in hand. Her black jacket unfastened to reveal a dark lace top that exposed more than I needed to see. Upon my arrival, his lips formed that smile that rendered me utterly defenseless. I didn't think you would come, he said in a sweet voice, watching me from top to bottom without hiding. I didn't either, I confessed. I sat before her, legs crossed in a poised manner. Though internally, I was anything but serene. The conversation started with a gentle ease, accompanied by the soft clinking of glasses and muffled giggles. However, Alba was not the type to squander time with unnecessary rounds. I don't like your husband, he said suddenly, his honesty catching me off guard. I gazed upward, perplexed. What makes you say that? Because he gazes at you as though you were a mere object in his display, not in a feminine way. Something in his tone sent shivers down my spine. How should I perceive myself then? I inquired softly. Alba leaned slightly on the table, narrowing the space that separated us. What do you see when you look at me now? The atmosphere grew denser. I sensed his fragrance, the depth of his dark gaze. I longed to respond, yet my lips stayed tightly shut, our knees brushed against each other beneath the table. And I stayed put. Upon arriving home, the sensation of his touch lingered, still igniting my skin. I slipped off my heels with a sigh, and allowed myself to collapse onto the sofa. At that moment, I caught sight of Alonso's silhouette framed in the doorway. My heart raced. Alonso. Where have you been? He inquired in an even tone. He did not reply with bitterness or envy. It was even more dire. It was with doubt, enjoying a beverage with a companion. He shut his eyes. Companion? I maintained my composure. Since when do you care about who I go out with? His jaw clenched. I remained quiet for a few moments, gazing at myself in a manner that sent a shiver down my spine. Ever since you began to act in a different way. I gulped. Salomon, who had remained in his corner until that moment, gradually rose, as if he sensed the palpable tension surrounding him. Alonso gazed at him, then he gazed in my direction. Exercise caution, Elena, he murmured. He entered the room, leaving me with a queasy stomach. Things were amiss. Something was on the verge of shattering. The apartment was enveloped in an unsettling stillness. It was a silence unlike any other, not the mundane quiet of routine, nor the dullness of boredom. It was something denser, pulsating with energy, as if the atmosphere was on the verge of shattering. After the meeting with Alonso, I lingered in the room, a glass of wine in hand. My thoughts swirling around me, Salomon came to me, resting his large head on my thigh. His gaze remained unchanged, reflecting wisdom and loyalty, yet it carried an unsettling quality. Something is bound to happen, isn't it? I whispered softly, running my fingers through his dense fur. I'm not sure if I anticipated a response. I rose and made my way to the bedroom. The door stood ajar. Inside, Alonso lay still, yet his breathing lacked the deep cadence of slumber. He was alert. I removed my dress with deliberate movements, sensing his gaze upon my back. I was aware of his gaze upon me, despite my efforts to act oblivious. As I settled into bed, he began to speak. Is there something you'd like to share with me? My body was tense. What do you mean? A moment of quiet. What is it that I sense you're concealing from me? I turned to him, discovering his gaze fixed on me in the shadows. His expression was beyond words. Yet there was an element in his tone that sent shivers down my spine. I'm not sure what you mean, Alonso. He offered a smile. However, it lacked warmth. I will discover the truth. I watched him as he shifted to the other side and switched off the light. Something within me shattered. It wasn't apprehension. It was absolute certainty. The ensuing days unfolded as a choreography of deception and furtive glances. Alonso remained silent, yet his gaze spoke volumes as he observed me. He reached out to me at surprising moments.